Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kindasound Radio. You're here with me, your host, Juliette Bryant, and this is Transformative Health. Today, we are talking top tips for our health. How can we be vibrant, amazing, radiant beings for 2024? Or whenever you're listening to this, how can we step into our power and be the most vibrant, healthy beings we can be? I mean, who doesn't want that, really? So, we're going to talk about some simple ways that you can bring that in for this new year. So, when we talk about our top tips for what can we do, what are the best things we can do really for this optimum health in our body? For me, it's looking at having a whole food diet. So, what is whole food? Best foods. So, eating a variety of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, and having a diverse range of these nutrients. One of the things you can look at is eating a rainbow of food. This is such a beautiful thing. We used to make charts with the kids, so we would have a color chart. And the aim of the color chart was to see how many different items, how many different colored foods you could eat in one day. And we would sit down in the evening at dinner together and we would go through the day. How many of you had? How many of you had? And there was this great kind of healthy competition between the kids as to who had eaten more. And sometimes it would get to a point where they were drawn or there was 1 point difference. And then they'd be like, oh, I'm going to go and get this. I'm going to go and get this. And they'd add in another color into their food, into what they'd had to be able to win. And that was so brilliant because it encouraged them to eat more diverse colored foods. We can get quite limited in our choices of food. What's so interesting is that every food has its own cross section of nutrients. So every color has different phytonutrients in it. So the more we're eating, the more of this array we get, the better it is for our health and well-being, because we're literally eating a rainbow. That's on a physical level. When you look energetically, a lot of the ancient traditions talk about our chakras, our energy centers, and these energy centers all have different colors that represent them. So what I feel is when we also eat this rainbow of food, what we're doing is we're tapping into the energetics of our body and working with these colors in the energetic field as well as the physical. I truly believe we are multidimensional beings. We are physical, mental, emotional, spiritual beings. And so when we work on all of these layers in our health and we work with plants in these different ways, this is going to bring us to optimum health, because we are more than our physical, but we definitely need to look after our physical as well. So it's this whole interplay, which I think is so beautiful. So eating this whole food diet is so important. Now, for me, I'm plant-based. And a lot of people in January go plant-based for the month. A lot of people are doing this for the environmental reasons. But they're looking more at how can I reduce my impact on the earth, and also how can I be cruel. And the animal farming methods that most people, not all, there are some people who are doing it nicely, but generally the animal farming methods that are used are barbaric. And I personally don't want to buy into barbaric enslaved torture of animals. That is not. If you've got in your garden chickens running around and they're loved and cared for and you're not injecting them and all the rest of it, then great. That's a very different thing to the factory farming that is done in today's world. So for me, plant-based is that solution to that, because I'm not buying into torture of animals. I don't want to torture anyone. I don't think that's right. And what they're injecting into these animals, it's not nice. So for me, having that plant-based choice, now you may not want to go fully plant-based, but maybe you want to be more plant-based, so you're having less impact. And maybe if you are having any meat or animal products, then you make sure that they're organic as the starter point. And you look into the farm that they're coming from, look into the scale of farming that's done on. Maybe you want to find a local farm where it's done on a much more small scale nature, or maybe you want to look into the ahimsa farms, the Krishna farms, where they are farming without harming any animals. They're doing it in a very different way to collect their dairy. It's not for meat, the Ahimsa farms, but it's for dairy and the byproducts of animals. So options to look at. But for me, the plant-based option is where I'm at. And the organic side of it is so fundamental. You know, if you want to really look at your health, top tips for health, and organic, I think, is one of the most fundamental things for our health and for the planet's health again. You know, if we're spraying, if you talk about being environmental and you talk about worrying about the planet and climate change and all this stuff, you should only be eating organic food because organic is so important. Otherwise, what we're doing is we're putting pesticides, fungicides, herbicides onto the soil. And what those are doing is they are killing the biodiversity of that soil. They are killing the life force of the soil. I've recently become a trustee for an amazing charity, the Vegan Organic Network, doing some great things. And one of the things they're doing is they've created a map. And what this map is it's to connect up wildlife corridors, areas that are being rewilded, and areas that are being grown without animal input. So when I talk about animal input, I'm talking about stock animals. So not if a deer goes by and poos on the ground, you know, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the use of, not the use of stock animals. So manure from horses or from cows, things like that, we don't want. And I was using it for a while until recently, until a few years ago. And I was talking to the Vegan Organic Network chairman, Dan, who's an amazing person, Dan Graham. And Dan was saying about the fact that these animals are fed wormers. And so the worming pills go into their manure. Now that manure then gets on the soil, but it's got these worming pills in it. And so what that does is it actually kills off our worms, like good worms, soil worms that we need to keep our soil healthy. And when I heard that, I thought, wow, goodness, that's not what we want. So sometimes we don't realize, you know, these things that are important. So, you know, for me, using organic food, where possible, vegan organic food, so without the use of stock animals. And on this map, as I was talking about, what's amazing is it's connecting up all these different people who are growing on a small scale, on a large scale, so that you can then look into it. So you don't have to be vegan to go on this map, but if you've got an area of garden that you're not putting animal input into, then you can register that. And what would be amazing is if we can create this corridor, if we can create this network of places that are all linked, that aren't using animal input. I think that'd be absolutely incredible. So organic food, you know, eating whole foods, eating plant-based, eating organic, so important for our health and our well-being, to bring in that organic side of it. So we're not getting the pesticides, we're not getting the fungicides, we're not getting the herbicides in our body as well as in the earth, because in our these things are not good for us. There's a lot of people I've seen in the last 5-6 years who have increasing amount of people who are gluten intolerant. And one of the things that is believed is it's not actually a gluten intolerance, but actually an intolerance to glyphosate. Glyphosate is Roundup, it's weed killer that is now sprayed on non-organic wheat crops when it's at its maximum yield just before it's harvested. Now the problem with this is it's not got any time to clear off it, the glyphosate, before it's consumed. So people are getting a much higher level of glyphosate. Now, when you look at glyphosate, Roundup, what's very interesting is that Roundup, there was a case against Monsanto for Roundup from a gardener who got cancer from using Roundup, and he was awarded, it was found that Monsanto were guilty, and he was awarded a large amount of money for this. And since then there have been a huge amount of class action suits going against Monsanto for Roundup, for it causing cancer. And glyphosate is what Roundup is. So we do not want to be consuming glyphosate. We don't want to be having non-organic food where possible, because it's not going to give us the best year ever at all, or the best health ever. So we really need to think about that. So then when we think about, okay, so what's the next layer down? So we want whole foods. moving to more plant-based. You don't have to be completely plant-based, that's, you know, that's your choice, but more plant-based food, more rainbow of food. Eating this cross section of nutrients is so important. Eating organic food, really, really key, so that we're focusing on dense nutrient packed food. One of the things that happens so often in our lives is we're eating food that is devoid of nutrients. They're anti-nutrients, things like your white bread, your white pasta, these foods that have been refined, white sugar. So when we refine, we strip out goodness from the food, and then we consume that food without the goodness that our body needs to break it down. So really important thing is to make sure we're eating these whole foods in their natural form. This is so important. Not eating lots of different processed foods, you know, really, really key. And then we want to make sure, obviously, that we're getting the cross section of nutrients. So we're getting our fats, we're getting our proteins, we're getting our carbohydrates, we're getting our minerals and our vitamins. So we're getting this cross section of nutrients from good sources. So we're eating plenty of healthy fats in their raw state. We're getting all of this goodness coming in. Really, really important. Part of the reason we created our superfood mix, All You Need Superfoods, was to give people some of these nutrients in a very easy, accessible way. So our All You Need has got biofermented pea and quinoa protein. It's biofermented to make it easier to digest. It's got fat in it from MCT, from coconut oil. You've got vitamin D, you've got magnesium, you've got B12, you've got super greens, you've got digestive enzymes, all of this great stuff in there. So you're giving yourself a really good start in an easy, accessible way. So you don't have to think too much. When we talk about essential nutrients, this is a really important area that we need to look at. So looking at, you know, making sure we're getting the iron, the vitamin D, the B12, the omega-3, the zinc, magnesium, all of these are very important to have in our diet. And when we're looking at things like vitamin D, we want to be having D3 with K2. Now D3, if you're on a plant-based diet, you'll want to make sure it's a vegan source of it from lichen, because otherwise it comes from the sheep's wool, from lanolin. And vitamin D is responsible for over 900 functions in our body. So it's a really important nutrient to be getting into our system, to be having. So have a think about that. And again, all of these essential nutrients are in therapeutic dose in the All You Need. So a great place to be getting those. Making sure that you're getting things like quinoa, you know, your nuts, your seeds, really, really important for your body. For me, the fats is so important, especially as I get older, having good fats in my diet. One of my favorite things is a raw, cold pressed pumpkin seed oil. Oh, I love it. Absolutely amazing. Tastes delicious, and my body really, really wants it. Avocados, seeds, nuts, olive oil, all of these things, you know, as you get older, especially as a woman, fats are so important because they are the building block of our hormones. So we really, really want to make sure that we're getting those fats in our diet so that we can build the hormones as much as possible to keep us healthy as our hormone production drops off a bit. So we talked a little bit about processed food, that we want to limit this refined processed food. We want to be limiting these unhealthy fats, you know, and we want to look at food really that is real. You know, so much food is not even grown in nature anymore, and this is very worrying, because we need the sunlight, we need the water, we need the elements, we need the good soil to be feeding those plants so they are nutrient rich when they grow. You know, we want to have this whole system in place. We want to be eating food sorry, that is going to sustain us. Oh, as opposed to food that isn't going to sustain us. You know, if you put dead food in, you don't get life force, you don't get energy, you don't get vitality. Whereas if you put real living food in, you get life force, you get energy back. There is a direct correlation. One of the things that is a great thing to do is to be having fresh food as much as possible. In the Ayurvedic system of medicine, they would call the fresh food the sattvic food, the food that brings peace to your body, the food that is peaceful in its kind of being. So that is the fresh food, the real living food. It's so important. One of the things that we can do if it's winter time and we can't grow food so much is we can be sprouting. So you can have sprouts on your windowsill. And that's a really good way to get that fresh nutrients into your body. When you sprout food, it really increases the nutrition, the accessibility of the nutrition for the body. So this is something really important to look at and to bring in. So when we're looking at our top tips for health and well-being, whole food, more plant-based, organic food, making sure we're getting adequate nutrients coming into our body, making sure we're eating living foods. These are all key things to be having. Limiting our processed food, so we're getting the good stuff coming in and less of the rubbish coming in. And when we think about, health and how we can really be in optimum health, the next thing we have to think about is hydration. So important for our body to stay hydrated. Water, herbal teas, really good to hydrate us. Even some fresh juices, things like with lots of cucumber or watermelon, things like this, high water content fruits, very, very good for our body to keep us hydrated. One of the things that I like to do with my water is add a little pinch of raw grey sea salt or Celtic salt into my water to make it easier to uptake that water into my body. So hydration, super important that we get hydration in. If you are on a plant-based diet, making sure that if you aren't having something like All You Need, you are taking supplements of B12, magnesium and vitamin D. I would say those are the kind of key ones to really be looking at having. You don't get B12 on a plant-based diet. And in fact, a lot of people who are meat eaters are struggling to get B12, and there's a lot more deficiencies because B12 is a bacteria that's found in the soil. And the problem is that because we're using things that kill bacteria in the soil, what's happening is the B12 is reducing. So animals have less B12, therefore we have less B12 if you consume animals. So having a good B12 supplement or having something like All You Need is a great idea to get in there. When we're looking at these top tips for our health, we've talked a lot about food-based tips for health, but really another really important part of it is our thoughts when we're making food and our thoughts when we're eating food, this mindful eating, paying attention to what you're eating, paying attention to those hunger cues, to those fullness cues, listening to your body, smelling your food, giving thanks for your food. All of these things are so important for our health and our well-being and can really improve our eating experience. If you go into a meal stressed out, if you go into a meal, and your cortisol levels are very high in your system, then what happens is your body is going to be in fight or flight. It's not going to be working on digestion. So you're not going to break down those foods that you are eating properly. So before you eat, taking a moment to, what I like to do is just place my hands over the food and just look at it and think about those colors and think about where the foods come from. And just to take a moment to be grateful for what I've got. That's really important. And what that does is it brings you into the present moment and takes you away from the argument you had with your children or the stress at work or whatever it may be, problems with money, whatever's going on. And it brings you into that present moment and being grateful for what you have. And that's so important when we talk about our health. Because then what's going to happen is you're actually going to absorb the food you're eating. It's not much point eating food if you're not going to be absorbing it, is there? So really, really key to be getting that goodness coming in and being able to be absorbed properly in your body. And the last point we're going to talk about when it comes to uh, really our top tips for health, how you can really thrive, is your gut health. There is the saying, what you eat, and that's very true on a level. But you are what you absorb. So when we think about this applies on many different layers. So if we think about you are what you absorb, you are what you absorb physically, so what your gut can digest and process. You are what you absorb from your environment. You are what you absorb from the emotions of people, from the toxins. So all of these things play an important part. And when it comes to you are what you absorb, and we think about the water, we're staying hydrated. If you're not drinking clean water that has been filtered with a good filter, or spring water, or reverse osmosis water, or you want to be drinking water that is good for you. Otherwise, you're putting a whole load of rubbish into your system, like chlorine and fluoride, whatever else they're deciding to put into the water. So when we think about we are what we absorb, this is a very important thing to look at. What do you take in from other people? What is your gut digesting? So how can we improve our digestion? How can we work on that part of it first of all? Digestive enzymes are great. We've got digestive enzymes in the All You Need, so that's a great way to get them. But there are lots of other great digestive enzymes out there. You can have those with your food so they can start to help you digest your food if you're not breaking your food down properly. Looking at getting a good probiotic. One of my favorites is a company called VSL3, and they do a great probiotic in a sachet, a powder that dissolves. Really, really high quality probiotic. So I would look at something like that. My oldest boy is going traveling in just under a week now, and he's got lots of probiotics to take with him. He's got charcoal to absorb toxins from his gut. He's got grapefruit seed extract to help, and garlic to help his gut stay healthy when he's away. And there's going to be different bugs and different bacteria in the environment for him to get used to. So, the gut is such an important thing. He's also got homeopathics for food poisoning to support his gut. So hopefully, knock on wood, he should be fine. But for all of us, we need to be thinking about our digestive health on a regular basis and what we're doing to support it. So really, really key things. One of the things that they've showed with the gut is if you can get out in nature and get your hands dirty, get your hands in the soil, this is actually very, very good for our gut health, to get the soil under our fingers, because it helps us build up the bacteria that we've got in our gut, the good bacteria, which is what we want. We want good amount of good bacteria. For any of you who've had a stomach bug, it can take a while after you have that stomach bug for your stomach to recover and to be able to break food down properly again. Because what's happened is the good bacteria have taken a hit with the stomach bug. And so therefore what's happening is you're struggling to break down the food as easily. You may struggle with fats and proteins more, whilst your gut bacteria rebalances. So giving it the good stuff to help it rebalance quicker is really great. There's some great companies out there do stuff like Rhythm Health. They do amazing coconut kefir shots. You can make your own sauerkraut or kombucha or water kefir. Lots of amazing products out there that you can really tap into and work. So focusing on your gut health is really, really important on a regular basis. It's not something you do once and then you leave it. Something that you work on regularly to keep it in a really good state. So to summarize, top tips for health: whole food, more plant-based, organic for sure, hydration, making sure you're getting a good cross section of nutrients. You're getting those essential nutrients into your body, the magnesium, the vitamin D, the B12, all of those great things. Making sure you're mindful when you're eating, thinking about what you're thinking about when you're eating, when you're making food, making sure that you're working on your gut. All of these things are amazing for really having top health. And these are just but a few. I could talk about this all day, but I want to keep it short and concise. The last little bit really is then the adding in of extra superfoods. What can you do to take your nutrition then to that next level? You've got those basics covered, you've got sprouting food going on, you're doing all of this great stuff. What can you do to ramp it up then to that next level? Adding in things like the medicinal mushrooms. Maybe you want to knock out the caffeine and you want to switch it up for something like my Awaken or my Supercharge, which are mushroom and adaptogenic drinks, no caffeine in them, no refined sugar, so that you can really start vibing and having optimum energy in a sustained way. This is really what we want. Thinking about replacing that refined sugar for alternatives like a raw local honey or coconut sugar, or growing some stevia plants yourself and using those stevia leaves yourself. Really easy to do. Lots of different options. Maple syrup is another great one, making sure that it's 100% pure maple syrup and you're not doing maple flavored syrup, which is actually just high fructose corn syrup. We don't want that. So these are some of the options that you can do. So reducing those things. What do we want to push out of our diet and what do we want to bring in? Remembering that in nature, if you create a void, then that void needs to be filled. So if you want to cut something out, you need to think about what you're going to consciously replace it with. Really, really important. And on my website, I've created lots of amazing products like the All You Need, like the Awaken, like the Supercharge, to really help that. Maybe you want help with your cognitive function, you want to ramp that up. Well, looking at the mushrooms like lion's mane, looking at my Connect tincture, which is helping with cognitive function, which has got things like ginkgo biloba in. Lots of different things that you can do. But one of the things is, if you want to think about top health, what is holding you back from that at this moment? Where are the areas in your life that your health is being held back from? What are the issues that maybe you've got? You might be struggling with something. What is it that you're struggling with? Let me know. Send a message to me and we can do a show on your top questions and I can answer them for you and give you guidance to help support you in really having optimum health. So I hope that's been useful. It's been great sharing this time with you. Please do remember to check out the other shows on Kindasound Radio. There are some amazing presenters, some brilliant shows, and think about supporting Kindasound with our Patreon. So that's it from me, Juliette Bryant. Do check out my website, juliettebryant.com. Lots of great recipes and articles in the blog section, lots of my products in the shop, and lots of amazing free videos you can see on my YouTube as well, which is Juliette's Kitchen. So thank you for listening to me, Juliette Bryant. I'll be back with you the same time next week.